Hi everyone, Mother Jamie here with your message for Pentecost. 50 days after Easter marks the end of the Easter season with the Feast of Pentecost. Don't forget to wear your red, which marks the day, and it is a time in which we often say we celebrate the birthday of the church because we are celebrating the arrival of the Holy Spirit. But just like other birthday parties and graduation ceremonies and so forth, we're having to celebrate in a little bit of a different way this year. But I hope you do mark Pentecost in a way because it is a very special feast day. Now, unless you are Pentecostal, in which case you are awash in the pneumatological empowerment, you might be a little fuzzy on what exactly is the Holy Spirit all about. And so today offers an opportunity to look at the different readings assigned for today and some different aspects of the way the Holy Spirit works, which can provide us with some much needed, very good news right now. First of all, the word spirit is the same word that means air or wind or breath. In Hebrew, that word is ruach. In Greek, it is pneuma. Think of your pneumatic tools and the pneumatological empowerment I just referred to. And so it's kind of an irony that the Holy Spirit is the same word for breath because we're all so preoccupied with breath right now and safety protocols and aerosols and droplets and the spread of the COVID-19 virus and wearing masks and so forth. So if we can turn that around and think of our preoccupation with droplets and aerosols and how easily they can spread, and think about that as how easily the Holy Spirit can spread, then that gives us a positive way to look at how this breath or this wind works. And so, of course, in the Bible, breath or wind is woven into the very story of creation itself. Remember that God breathed into the first human, the first man, Adam, and that is the story of the first human being coming into being. And likewise, we have Jesus appearing to the disciples on the night of Easter, and he breathes into them. That's John's Gospel, the 20th chapter. Receive the Holy Spirit. And so there's that pneuma, that breath, that wind, where he is breathing the new life of his risen self into them. And so that breath is the very stuff of life. And our assigned psalm for today, Psalm 104, is sort of a song about creation and about God's presence breathing and bringing new life into things. And when God turns away, life withers away. So the very life force comes from this. Secondly, we are given a glimpse of the role of fear, which is something we know a lot about these days as well. In Psalm 104, it talks about God makes the Leviathan for the sport of it. Now, it would be very easy to gloss over that, but we have to remember, first of all, that the Israelites were terrified of the water. The sea, the deep, represented a very frightening, scary place filled with horror and death. And a Leviathan is a sea monster. So it would be the epitome of something incredibly frightening. And it's saying God made it for the sport of it. God made this scary sea monster for God's own sport, for God's own delight. That puts it in perspective. It's kind of like, well, we're afraid, but this is God's creation and God knows what God is doing. Likewise, when Jesus appears to the disciples, he says, peace be with you. Now, that's just not peace, man. And again, peace here is not the absence of conflict, but peace is more that sort of deep sense of well-being. Now, he's saying this to the disciples who are locked. We are told they are locked behind closed doors for fear of the Jews. They are locked. They are hiding. Remember last week my sermon about the amygdala hijacking the prefrontal cortex? And that's our survival mechanism of fight, flight, or freeze. Well, they're living out of their amygdala. They're frightened. They took flight. They have run away and they are hiding. And Jesus comes through the locked door and says, "Peace be with you." So he is giving his sense of well-being in the midst of frightening circumstances. Remember, Jesus didn't use the language of being under threat when he was under threat. And even in the midst of the disciples running a risk of suffering the same fate Jesus did, which they would rather avoid, thank you very much, he offers his peace. It is a sense of well-being that transcends current circumstances. And also transcending circumstances is the other, perhaps most familiar use of the Holy Spirit, which is from the 2nd chapter of the Acts of the Apostles, in which we see the tongues of flame above their heads, and despite the fact that they are speaking different languages, they are able to understand each other and be understood. So there is that sense of the presence of the Holy Spirit transcending, enabling people to transcend the limits of their own language, their own culture, their own perspective, and there is an understanding among all who are present. And goodness knows we need that right now, because we are so caught up in our own stories, in our own narratives, in our own understanding of things, in our own language that we use to frame different circumstances, that we are getting farther and farther apart from those who differ from us. And the Holy Spirit is a direct antidote to that. So, on this feast of Pentecost, it is a great celebration in the life of the church, because we believe that the Holy Spirit is present in the life of the church. If this were simply a human institution, it would have imploded long ago, because you know how it is. We human beings left to our own devices get up to all manner of mischief. So we believe that the Holy Spirit is present even in our weak moments, even when the church has failed in different ways. And we believe that this, as John talks about retaining the sins of any, and it's not really about forgiving morality, it's more about holding on to this relationship with God. Remember, sin in John's gospel is not engaging in the relationship with God. So we stay engaged in the relationship with God. We access this Holy Spirit as available to us as our own breath. And we trust in this breath, in this pneuma, this ruach being breathed into creation itself, created in love, created for love, and that we are created and renewed by this ongoing presence of the Spirit, so that we in turn, like the disciples commissioned by Jesus, are empowered to then take that relationship forward. And so we promote and continue that work that was done by Jesus, and through the Spirit continues on through the disciples, through all of us, recognizing that our fears and our anxieties are held in check, recognizing that God's creation is the embodiment of God's love, even if we're afraid of the sea monsters, and that the ongoing presence of the Spirit to renew and tapping into that, staying connected with that, is what enables us to live into that peace, live into that peace, have the courage to open the unlocked door, and be willing to sit and listen to those whose language is different than ours, trusting that through the Spirit there will be understanding, compassion, love, an ability to grow together, an ability to transcend divisions, and an ability to be a part of this creation that God has breathed life into and continues to renew in an ongoing way through the presence of the Spirit, as present with us as those aerosols and droplets we have to wear the masks and wash our hands to avoid. Turn those images on their head and see them as the pervasive, positive presence of God's love, God's Spirit with us always. Happy Pentecost, everyone. Bye-bye now.